Then she simply said, I'm a lobbyist. And then we both understood what she did. We as siblings appreciated Brenda's determination, her values and her principles, her perseverance, her achievements, and particularly the kindness that she extended to us all. We are all indebted to her for her exemplary love and care she provided for our mom. Brenda had a heart of gold, and she would help anybody in the time of need. She was a wonderful sister and a very good person. We all miss her. May our sister Brenda rest in peace. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for stealing my thunder. I was going to use that story, Brenda introducing me to Karina in my closing, but I guess I'll have to improvise now. But truly, it did bring back memories for me. So, next, we have Rebecca Barootes to speak. This is actually Brian's youngest child. Again, perfection is reached at the youngest child, and that's when the parents stop. Becky is going to regale us with some of the stories and insights from each of Brenda's 6 nieces and nephews. Those she's unable to be here in person, as she lives in London, England, and we all know what a mess travel is trying to get somebody here from Great Britain right now. So Bex collaborated with each of her cousins and brought together their stories to life in this video, if I can make it work.
Hello and greetings from London. Thank you all for coming today to share in the memory of Brenda Barootes. I'm Rebecca Barootes, or Becca as Auntie Brenda would call me. I am Brenda's second youngest niece, one of 6 nieces and nephews who had the honor and privilege of calling Brenda our aunt. Ryan especially was lucky because not only did he get to call her his aunt, but also his godmother. I want to start by thanking my cousins especially. Brooklyn, Ryan, and Jeff, as well as my siblings, Ben and Erica, for allowing me to share their memories and stories with you today. As I reached out to gather snippets to include from my cousins and siblings, the same few points were repeated over and over again. Auntie Brenda was the cool aunt. She loved sharing experiences with her nieces and nephews, be it concerts, carving watermelons into helmets for rider games, evenings spent listening to jazz, shared bottles of wine, or speeding around in her infamous convertible that so many of us have vivid memories entwined with. She valued the experiences she gave and the time she spent with us. I laughed so many times reading the stories shared with me and reflecting on my own while preparing for today. Auntie Brenda lived up to the cool aunt title through and through. My cousin Jeff shared how Auntie Brenda flew him out for his first legal drink when he was 18, but had also secretly ensured for a few years before that he didn't go thirsty. She always had us covered, no matter what. Ben reflected on her cool aunt status by telling of the time Auntie Brenda had arranged for the 2 of them to attend a Bob Dylan concert together. It wasn't his first, but it was hers, and she made it memorable. Beers in the backyard, and treating Ben to tapas for the first time before going to the concert and spoiling him with merchandise such as a poster he had mounted and framed and a hoodie he still wears today. She loved sharing first experiences with us, even going so far as FaceTiming Brooklyn during a Queen concert so they got to enjoy Bohemian Rhapsody together. Auntie Brenda was famous for us all for her thoughtful and treasured gifts. these were always connected to experiences you had together, stories she would tell you, or fun items she just thought would make you smile. For Brooklyn, it was the white fluffy rug given to her when Auntie Brenda moved. The rug Brooklyn used to lay on for hours and hours while visiting Auntie Brenda. It was tied to so many memories of chats, visits, and even sleepovers. Now, Brooklyn has it and thinks of those times each and every time she walks past it. For me, one cherished item that stands out was my first fountain pen she gave me for my university graduation. She included also a handwritten note with it that explained why she specifically chose that color, type of pen, and the symbolism behind that pen for her and I. The pen and that handwritten note have traveled the world with me and have inspired my own collection. Some may say obsession, with fountain pens, ink, and handwritten notes. Brenda's gifts were tied to memories and built deeper connections with us. A Christmas gift to my brother Ben when he was in grade 11 or 12 of the Canterbury Tales was one such example. Not only did she give him a copy of the book, but she also added a personal note inside commenting that her high school teacher said the Miller's Tale was X-rated. These extra special touches and little notes that was what Auntie Brenda was all about. And in case you were wondering, the Miller's Tale was the first one Ben started with. Her gifts were always well thought out, even if they seemed random or odd to anyone but the receiver. Such is the year she gave Erica 100 feet of bubble wrap. Not only was she the cool aunt and fun, but she was also supportive, protective, and caring. She was fierce and gave everything to those who loved and cared about. When you were with her, she always gave you her undivided attention and enjoyed long chats. As Ryan put it, Auntie Brenda was always supportive, even when she knew I was about to learn a lesson the hard way. Ryan's words resonate to the very core of Auntie Brenda. She was always very focused on making sure everyone around her was happy and had everything they needed. Her concern was never placed on herself. It was always placed on everyone else. She was always there for the people that she held close to her heart. Thinking of Calgary and Palm Springs brings floods of memories of Auntie Brenda. As many of us got older, we had the pleasure of visiting her in her Palm Springs home. Erica shared a vivid memory of helping fill Auntie Brenda's pool with balloons for one of her Christmas parties. She was always welcoming and made sure you left happy, usually painfully full, and relaxed. In more recent years, Auntie Brenda got back into horseback riding, a passion she held in her youth. This brought her to the UK every year or so, which meant her and I got to visit and have dinner together. Auntie Brenda loved food, long chats, and reading. She loved food, long chats, and really good wine and cocktails. Throughout all her visits, these three aspects were very important. I cherish the memory of her first trip she made to London. I booked a table at a jazz club called 606 Club in Chelsea, We drank, we ate, and we listened to jazz for hours and hours. And when we left, instead of taking a taxi back, we decided to walk. This walk should have taken about 30 minutes. For us that night, it took close to an hour and a half. We walked through the streets talking about life and music. That is where she shared with me her favorite bands. One particularly, Pink Martini, which at one point in our walk, she made us stop and waited for me to download a whole album of Pink Martini before she let us continue onward. She said that night set a high bar for her future visits. Her following visits would include going to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant. To her dismay and a lot of complaining, there was no screaming heard from the kitchen, but the food was good. We'd had drinks at Palm Court on Park Lane. We'd have cocktails at any little pub that we would find. The third night out I planned for us, she said, was the best. She also requested, more like ordered, that I need to recommend this place to anyone else who ever heads over to London. It is the Wright Brothers Seafood Restaurant in Soho. As mentioned before, experience was valuable to her. Dinner was not a rushed event, and that night we had 4.5 hours spent enjoying that restaurant. She made me try many different dishes that I had never had before. And we had many, many bottles of wine that were proof of the enjoyment. On her last trip to the UK, we had a sleepover at her hotel that night. The night before we went to the Book of Mormon musical together. Unlike our previous adventures, we did not spend much time out of the hotel, but we did still get up to most trouble that we've ever had. This will stay between her and I and hotel security. She may be gone, but for each of us, the reminders that will help her memory live on forever. Maybe it's seeing the white fluffy rug, or putting on one of her famous Stampede outfits, hearing a Pink Martini song, or pulling on a Bob Dylan hoodie. Enjoying a pizza from a place she loved, or seeing a Mazda Miata. Her memory lives on for each of us in these ways. Finally, I want to thank Auntie Brenda from all of us nieces and nephews for the memories and times. You will be missed forever. Thank you.
Next, we have someone that knew Brenda her whole life. Our cousin Celia, Christina, and Anne were our relatives that lived closest to us as we grew up. Brenda was a flower girl at Christina and Andy's wedding, and Celia, Christina, and Anne, and Auntie Cleo, and Uncle Sam were always there for all of us. Celia and Ron settled here in Calgary, and when Brenda moved, she became even closer to them. So, up next to speak is our cousin Celia.
Thank you, Brenda. You stole some of my thunder. Good afternoon or good evening. Brenda and I, as Brent said, were second cousins. Myself and my sisters Christine and Anne, who are also here this evening. Our papoos, grandfathers, were brothers. Our family spent much time in Regina when we were young, visiting with my father's family, but I remember many times when we visited with Uncle Staff and Aunt Betty and the Barootes siblings.